I've sent over 13,000 DMs, and here's what I learned. Most outreach campaigns aren't aiming at anything. Sure, you're sending messages, you're replying, but you're not getting any results. And then you wonder how come outreach isn't working. If you don't have a clear target for your outreach every single day, you'll never hit it. So, what's the target you should be aiming for? What I follow is the industry averages for my niche, and I match that and try to do more. For high ticket coaching and agency services on Instagram, the reply rate should be around 5 to 7%. And from those replies, you should be booking about 10 to 20% of all the replies. And from those book calls, your close rate needs to be over 30%. So 30% is the minimum. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to use 6% for the reply rate, 15% for the booking rate. And then practice, every 100 DMs, you should get 6 replies. And out of these 6 replies, with 15% booking rate, you should book at least one call. Now, if you can only close 30% of all your calls, that means you need 3 calls to close one deal, and that means 300 DMs just to get one deal. At this point, you should see two things. It's either you're not sending enough DMs, you're not sending more than 300, or your reply rate, booking rate, or close rate sucks. Now, if this is the benchmark, how can you aim for it? My rule is pretty simple. What I do is I look at my stats every 300 DMs, and if my numbers don't match the averages, I have a problem somewhere in my system. And there are only 3 places the problem can be. You either have a problem in how many calls you're booking, a problem in how many closes you're getting, or you have a really, really low reply rate. The best outreach campaigns optimize all 3 of these. And each segment needs a different kind of optimization. For example, if you have bad booked calls, then you need a sales flow. You need to figure out how to ask for a call, and you're probably replying late. For the reply rate, you probably have a bad opener. You're talking to the wrong ICP. Then for closes, it's simply unqualified leads or a bad sales team, bad sales process. Let's start from the very top. So if you have a problem getting booked calls, you probably don't have a sales flow. And if you don't know what that is, it's just a step-by-step process of how the conversation is supposed to look like, what you're supposed to say next, and ultimately the final CTA that you want to send, which usually means, can we hop on a call? And I don't want to get into this right now, but you can have a sales flow as long as 10 messages or as short as 4 messages. And it all depends on the complexity of your offer, the kind of ICP you're talking to. In short, the longer your sales flow, that works if you have a complicated offer and your ICP needs to be agitated more before they can hop on a call. A short sales flow is great if your offer is simple, if your ICP is simple, and if the problem you solve is pretty straightforward. You have this issue, do you want me to solve that? Can I show you how on a call? That's basically it. And the reason why a sales flow is so important is because it helps you steer the conversation. You never get into that real problem where you're just talking to someone, giving advice, consulting on them, and you're talking with them for over 3 days with 50 messages, and ultimately the conversation is too long that the call is awkward now. If you already have a sales flow, you're probably replying to them late if the book calls is still below 15%. And I talked about this in my other video where I was talking about how to avoid DMs from going cold. And what that means is basically when you're talking to someone over 5 days and the conversations are basically 2 messages a day, 3 messages a day. And so what happens there is when you're both in the wrong time zone, you never get to actually talk to each other face to face. You can't make the sales flow long because the longer it takes to talk to them, if it takes 5 days, the less invested they're going to become. So even if you have late replies, this is still an optimization on the sales flow part. But the next thing you want to optimize is the reply rate. If your reply rate is below 6%, you probably have a bad opener or you're talking to the wrong ICP. The wrong ICP problem only happens if the market is untested, if the ICP isn't even on IG, or if the ICP looks different than you think. And now this just means you're doing a bad job at scraping and filtering leads. But for these two, this usually happens when you're trying on when the ICP of your client is new, when you're trying a different offer, and when you're trying something different. So the advice I give my clients who are doing cold outreach for the first time is to never try a new offer that you think might work, because there's really no way to tell if that market is even on IG, if the market is going to respond to outreach, unless you've tried it before. And that's why it's always a good idea to work with someone who's already done outreach. They know, they talk to this ICP, they know that this angle works on this ICP, and all you have to do as the person who does the outreach is to just add more volume to how many DMs they send. Try not to create a new offer completely, a new audience completely, because you're going to go into uncharted territories and you're going to waste a lot of time, especially if things don't work out. Now, if you have a bad opener, you can increase your reply rate by being general with the opener, saying something like, "Hey, can I ask a quick question?" Or you can be specific if your reply rate is too high, but most of them that are replying and that are getting on the calls are unqualified leads. So for example, if you have a 14% reply rate or an 11% reply rate, but then you notice that these are the kinds of people you don't even want to work with in the first place, you can try to make your opener a lot more specific so that people will reply less, but the ones who do reply are the ones you actually want to talk about. And this is exactly what happens here. When it's specific, you have low replies, but most of them are qualified. And if it's generic, you get a high reply rate, but there's no filtering, so you run that risk. There are exceptions to the general or specific rule, and that's when you're using a lead magnet. Because lead magnet is neither general or specific. It's a free value type of thing. And as you can see, is the only exception I found. I couldn't think of anything else. But if you don't know what a lead magnet opener is, I can make a video on that maybe next week, or just send me a chat on Instagram and I'll show you how it looks like. This is what I personally use, and it increased my reply rate up to like 11% on my own outreach, and it's a banger. Another thing is the reason why 6% reply rate is so important is because if your reply rate is bad, you could get marked as spam for not getting enough replies. And that's why even if you only want to talk to qualified people, regardless if your reply rate is 2%, it's still important to aim for 6%. Otherwise, you're going to be marked as spam, and most likely all of your DMs are going to land in the hidden inbox on Instagram, which is how they combat spam in the first place. And that's going to really, really tank the chances of your ICP even opening your messages. The next optimization is the simplest one, but it's the hardest to pull off. And that's if you're not getting at least 30% on your closes, it's either you have unqualified leads or you have a bad sales team and a bad sales process. Unqualified leads is the easiest one to solve because you can just scrape better leads. And what that usually means is you need more manual labor in doing this, because you have to be the one to, because you want to make sure that whoever it is that's booking with you can actually pay for your service or actually needs your service. But if you have a problem with the bad sales process and a bad sales team, that's a bigger issue, and it's personally not what I'm good at. So I'm not gonna put my opinion there. Another thing you can do that I forgot to add here is you don't necessarily need to get better lead quality, but you can filter them before they book a call by adding a form in your Calendly sheet. So whenever they try to book a call with you, they can answer their name, their email, how much money they have, how much money they want to make, their offer, and so on. And that'll weed out the bad clients pretty well. Now, if you see this entire thing and you don't know where to start, the next video I'm going to make is the step-by-step guide of how I would go through this entire process from step 1 to step 3, and where to start diagnosing my own cold outreach campaigns. I hope this was useful. If you have a question, just leave a comment below, or you can contact me on Instagram. My link is down below.